Andres, welcome to the show, man. I'm glad you're here. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Nate, happy to be here, man. Thank you for having
Hey,
me.
we were talking a little bit before the show just about your background. You've been an online coach and a registered dietitian, yeah?
Yeah, that's
Right.
correct.
For a long time. You've been doing this since before the pandemic. Can you just tell me a little bit about your background? Give me that kind of that 30-second rundown of like what brought you to
Yeah,
this point in your career?
for sure. I am an Venezuelan immigrant. Came to the U.S. in 2009 to complete my career in dietetics. Became a dietitian in 2012. Work mostly with pro athletes for the longest time. Working in training facilities and things like that. And at some point, I decided I wanted to kind of go on my own, and I built my company called Planus Nutrition. It was a kind of brick and mortar for like the first 3 years, and I think in 2017 is when I decided to kind of things on wanted to take things online, and we have been around ever since in the online coaching world. Before the online, I guess, like coaching and stuff boomed in after the pandemic. And yeah, we help and support men mostly optimize their health, improve nutrition and health outcomes through expert built systems and frameworks through what we call a blueprint methodology, which is what it's my baby, what I've been creating for like the past few years so far.
Awesome. I love that. I love to hear that. So can you just like kind of what was your experience going from brick and mortar to like on the online space? Because I went from personal training in a brick and mortar to doing like personal training online. And what I found personally was that like just giving people an exercise routine didn't get them results. So I was like, all right, got to go to nutrition. So I've been like, I was really good, went deep on nutrition. Was like, all right, here's an exercise routine, and here let's talk about food. And then kind of what I've discovered in the last 3 years or so is that it goes beyond even food to kind of identity and mindset and how we think about ourselves. And so it's taken me a long time. I'm a slow learner. It's taken me a long time to really build something that I think is impactful and able to be delivered online. What was your experience like with that? Was there any changes you had to make or how you talk to people or the way you address certain things, stress, environment, lifestyle, et cetera, that had to change for going from face to
Yeah.
face to online?
Yeah, it's been an evolution, man. So I'll walk you through the way that we're taught in school for dietitians, and in the dietetics world. We are kind of like a therapist in a way, as far as not the actual what we do, but just you go and see a person. It's a consultation, and you have follow up. So the brick and mortar space within our field of dietetics, it's like that. So it's like a doctor's office visit. That's the way that most of us practice dietetics. So I did not like that. First,
Hmm.
it was just more like we would spend an hour together, and then we have a follow up, and sometimes that would happen like a month after, whatever is the case. People didn't really want to pay on like a per session basis, and I realized I was not really giving the value that I wanted to my clients. There was no accountability. Accountability was a huge thing that I understood how much value we were not putting into it, and that's when I decided to kind of flip things around. So I realized that the model of good old, like old school dietetics was just broken, and that's when I decided to say, you know what, I want to transition into a way that I can provide more value to people. And then lo and behold, just like you said, over the years I realized I started the opposite as you. I started nutrition, then I started to integrate training, and then just like you in the past few years, realizing that people are not just struggling with what to put on their plate, they're struggling with their habits and their mindset and who they are as like people, when they're wanting to be like years down the line, and who are they today, and like what is like their characters, their traits and their values. And I feel like this is why I have transitioned into more of a holistic view of health, which it sounds like it's kind of what you're doing as well. So it's integrating everything to make sure that we kind of create an integral person. And I think that's, to me, the biggest transition and shift that I've had. And I feel also becoming a better coach in the process doing that as well.
I mean, it sounds like you're constantly evolving, which is really what you need to
Yeah.
be doing as a coach, as someone who's asking other people to evolve themselves.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm excited about this episode because I wanted to like you have obviously a lot of experience. I feel like we are aligned in a lot of ways, but like I want to talk about nutrition, but I really feel like we can get a little bit beyond the normal, like what's the best diet conversation.
Yeah.
Because when I think about one of like the key lessons I've learned in the past couple of years, it's that people will not act outside of their identity. It's if you like, you can white knuckle a 6 week like diet. You can do a 21-day cleanse. You can hit 75 hard. But if your identity doesn't make a shift, you are not going to be able to maintain your results long term. What's your opinion on that? Can you talk a little bit about how you help people facilitate and accomplish like a global identity shift, which is crazy?
Yeah, it's that you just said the keyword to identity shift. I ask a single question.
Mm.
And I'm a dad now. I have a 2-year old, so like things have
Congratulations. It's
shifted.
awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Things have shifted a lot in the past, like few years for me. So now I think more ahead. Before, like when I was in my 20s, my 20 was just like what I want to be in, like in a couple of years, want to make money, hustle hard, all those different things like that. And things have shifted a lot. So now I actually translate the same things because I work with many like men and some women 30 plus, and I ask them a single question, which is, who are you in 20 years? Like, who is that person? Like, and I want you to think about the most idealized, like the best version of yourself. Walk me through a day in the life of that person. And then I ask him, okay, like, and they walk me through all the things. Like, I'm like 20 pounds lighter. I have all these incredible things. I have money, a great family, all that kind of stuff. And I ask him a follow up question, which is, does the person that you're living in, the body that you're living in today, reflect that person? And the answer is always no. I was like, okay, so what did you feel like you need to do to get to that place? And a lot of times, coaching, as you probably realize, is helping people see the things that they're not seeing themselves, helping them identify the blind spots so they can make decisions. And I feel like the best way to coach a client is for them to come up with the solutions and the things they have not seen. And sometimes it's asking those questions. And I love the fact that you're asking about identity because it's not talked often. And I think when we tap into that, that's the profound why that drives people to make change. And that goes beyond just, like you said, the 75 hard, the detox, the carnivore diet, the keto things. That's the stuff that lasts beyond just those diets.
Yeah. So people come to me all the time and they're like, "Hey, I want to talk about my nutrition." And I'm always like, how's work for you? Do you feel like you're a good father? People are like, "Whoa, like I
They're not
did not sign
expecting
up for
that.
this."
Exactly, and that's the thing. That's a hard thing to sell too, because and that's when we're talking about like coaching people and bringing in clients and stuff like that is it comes down to you gotta like give people what they want, or I guess like sell them what they want and give them what they actually need. And ultimately, what do people want? People want to look great. They want to lose the 30 pounds. They want to do it as fast as they can. So when I'm like trying to, and trust me, I went through a long period of time, like, doing the opposite, which is like a mindset shift. Let's kind of change your identity. Let's kind of work on like building better habits. None of that stuff really resonated with none of them.
Well, it doesn't. It's
And
not sexy. It's not like you're not signing new people up to shift identity. You're signing people up to lose 30 pounds, but they don't realize that that's the path,
yeah,
especially if they want to keep that off.
correct. So, and I'm hoping that these type of platforms allows people to really understand this. And I always appreciate people like you who are talking about this stuff, because then it goes just beyond the surface level stuff. Even though we're still continue to market that way, I want people to kind of come into our world, to say, okay, I realize, because everybody that's gone through our programs will always say that. I was like, what's the biggest thing that you took away that you were not expecting to get out of this process? And they always say, it's like, I think differently. It's the mindset shift. I'm a different person. I make different decisions. Were you expecting to get to do this when you started this program? And everybody says no. It's always the case,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
know.
but to do something you've never done before, you got to become someone you've never been. So what's
Yeah,
the difference in your opinion? Like, since you started off your career working with professional athletes, what's the difference in mindset between a professional athlete and kind of just like a everyday, like general population dad, in terms
I
of
think
their
it's
mindset, their mentality, and kind of their work ethic?
I think it's focus. and and I always like tell people, like, professional athletes and people like you and I who are not, we're not that different. We just are not focusing on the right thing. So what do I mean by that? When you're a pro athlete, you're just focused on a specific target, which is, particularly at that level, is you want to perform, you want to be the best, because otherwise you're out of a job, right? So the moment you step into the arena, the moment you step into the court, like, you want to perform your best. So you're gonna do everything that you can so you can have that ultimate, or like the best performance. the transition I made when I was working with professional athletes and the mindset that I took from there is like a professional athlete has a growth mindset. It's not fixed, which means they got there because they learned from their mistakes and they did not let their mistakes define them. They allowed themselves to fail because they did a lot of times. I mean, look at all the greats and they will ask you, like, I mean, Kobe Bryant, all these, like, big, insane, amazing top athletes, they failed a lot and they did not let that define them, and they allowed that kind of mindset to turn into something that became their fuel for them to be better and to become better and to do better things in life. So if we translate that mindset into just average people, like, who are just, living life, being parents, being husbands and wives and stuff like that, is, you cannot be defined by the failures that you experience every day. So if we bring that into wellness and health, is, you failed at your diet, you're not necessarily being as consistent. If you let that define you and you just simply now shift your identity to become the person who cannot stick to a diet, then that's a fixed mindset, because now you start to believe that you're never going to change. And that's so far from the truth. So, for me, the most important thing is to switch from that fixed mindset, which is more of a victim mentality. You justify your decisions and you come up with excuses as to why you can't do something, and you transition from for to growth, which is, if I'm not there yet, why is it, and what can I do to be better to help me get closer to it? I think that is the biggest change. And I have worked not just professional athletes, but I have been involved with many. One of my good friends, his name is Justin Sua. He is the mental performance coach for a lot of professional athletes. I think he worked with the Rays and a bunch of stuff like that. And he always talks about this. And that's the clear uh, difference that exists between those who make it to a professional leagues and those who don't, which is, again, like that resilience and in that mindset state that they're currently on.
I want to go back to something you just said about becoming a person who believes that they can't stick to a diet, because you have an identity. Like everyone has an identity, whether you believe it or not. But a lot of our identities are that fixed mindset, and they are identities that keep us stuck, or like kind of, I always think about like the line in the Star Wars where he says, only a Sith deals in absolutes.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I just never, I've never been good at that. I don't like this type of food. I've never been good at the gym. I've always feel uncomfortable when I go work out. And I always like think about like one of the ways that I like to shift people's beliefs, which is, okay, that might be true. You're bad at sticking to diets. History like shows us that. But also it's true that the more you stick to something sustainable, the better you get at it long term. And both of those things are true, but only one of them is really serving that 20-year vision that you're putting in their heads, or that they have themselves. And so I feel like if you can just identify that both things can be true, but only one of them really serves me in my future, and then we can start shifting the internal dialogue to
Yep.
reflect the outcome that we're looking for, rather than being like, just never been
Yep.
good at exercise.
And there's one key word that separates those two things, and it's the word yet. And this is something I tell people all
Mm.
the time, which is, well, I have never been able to stick to a diet yet. I have never been able to kind of stick to a workout routine, to build good habits yet. You haven't done it yet. That doesn't necessarily mean, and this is something like, your present does not define your future. It's like, a mentor kind of once told me this and like really stuck with me. It's like, where you're at today does not have to be where you're going to be tomorrow. And this is something I try to live in on a daily basis as an entrepreneur, because if I'm having a bad day, I'm having a bad week, I'm having a bad month, if I let that define me, then by those standards, I'm going to continue to live in this mindset, or like this narrative, that I'm never going to be a good entrepreneur, and might as well just kind of give up and just stop. Just like we were talking earlier, the only way to kind of fail at this is just to give up on it. And I think, like, when we translate that into like people's health journeys, it looks something like that. It's like they're giving up on themselves because they had one failure, two failures, three failures. Doesn't matter. It's like failure is feedback. Every single time that you kind of fail at something, you're getting a one step closer to actually succeeding. And again, that's the reminder that I try to have with myself in my own personal struggles, whether it's health, business, parenthood, or marriage, in anything really.
I mean, they're all kind of the same. They all have the same path, and they're none of them are easy. And looking for the shortcut only sets you back, it seems like.
Exactly, in every domain of life.
Diving into nutrition though a little bit, because you talk a lot about like simplifying nutrition. I love that you break down trends. What is one thing that you see people consistently overcomplicating in their nutrition?
I think it's trying to, well, I think it's the opposite of simplifying. It's, I was just talking about this earlier, which is we live in a world where this it's great, but it's also bad. Why? Because we have too much information.
Mm-hmm.
And with too much information, it comes a lot of decisions to make. And the more decisions that we have to make about what to do, the more complicated it becomes. So this turns into a puzzle where we're collecting pieces in social media, which is where most people typically get their information these days, but nobody knows how to put it together, right? So I think the biggest mistake people are making is like trying to do that, trying to take different pieces of what you hear and here and there and trying to kind of put it together, and that becomes more complicated. So they're overcomplicating the process. Usually they're starting to, they want to run before they can walk, and that's another big issue that I'm noticing, right? Like you want to go and do a full blown fasting methodology type of thing without really mastering the basics. I call those any type of dietary pattern that it changes a food group or a specific type of regimen that you have to have. I call those advanced nutrition strategies. And you don't hear me talk about diets. You hear me just talk about advanced nutrition strategies because they all can fit into a specific place. We talked about experiments and stuff, and we can experiment with those things for a specific purpose or outcome, but not without you knowing the basics and the foundational things around nutrition and health first. Like if you don't know how to get enough protein on a daily basis, if you're not necessarily properly getting hydrated and all these different things, then don't start running and don't start trying to do something aggressive before you start to master the basics. Because ultimately, what are you going to do when you're done with that? Where are you going to go back to? And it goes back to the identity thing. You're going to go back to being the person you were before you started the thing. So, which is not the person that is going to be able to sustain that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the problem that I think happens. People are not thinking long term. People are not thinking the plan for after the plan. They're just thinking, they're just very narrow minded on like, I just want to get to this place. Okay. And what then? And nobody really has a plan for it. And I think that's the big problem.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons I've switched up my coaching program. All the coaches say or all the online business coaches say, do a 2-month program, a 3-month program. Sells easier, right? You make more money off of it. But I prefer to do a 6-month program. That way we have the plan and we have the post plan, right?
Yep.
Or like the plan where you fell off at week 6 and then you came back on week 8, and then we can still continue working together. You know what I mean? We can still like
Yep.
overcome some of those hurdles.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like
But
for us, it's something similar. So for us, like I do 4 months, but it's more like to I tell them it's a foundational process from the beginning. It's like we're gonna build the foundation, and afterwards, it's like to work with us is like a whole year, like different tiers, but it's a whole year because I tell them like our most successful. I have coached like over 400 or 500 people, um, between like when I work in privately in places and my business, like altogether, it's been quite a few people that I have like had the pleasure to be able to help and support. And in all of them, what I realize is like the average amount of time that it takes for somebody to fully change identities and to really create like change is 9 to 12 months
at
of
least, yeah.
consistent applied work. 4 months is not enough to do that. 3 months is not enough to do that. That's great for business because obviously we cannot get more people through the door, and we can kind of create some changes, and ultimately we're going to believe that there's a small percentage of those people that are going to be successful long term. I like to believe that, but ultimately that's not reality. And when you think about commercial diet plans, for example, what are they preying on? Like they're preying on people's failures to continue to kind of get them to stick to the same thing, to buy them and buy them and buy them more and more and more of their products. And then people really praise their programs because they lost X amount of weight. I made a YouTube video about this like diet program, huge, like it's huge. It's called Up to V. I don't know if you ever heard about it,
Oh yeah.
but
I hate
yeah, it's
Optivia. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like like box meals. And I made a YouTube video about it, and you see the comments and like so much hate. It's like this worked for me. I lost like 80 pounds, all these different things like that. It's like you're seeing the comments of 10% of the people that went through the program and actually succeeded long term. But what about the other 90%? Because I've had conversations with them. Why were you not successful? I'm working with two of them right now. Why were you not successful long term? Because you did not really fix the right things. And that's a
It,
problem. I don't have a problem with those things if you have a plan for after, but not
it's
many people do.
survivorship bias though, right? Similar to
Yeah.
like a lot of people are telling me they want to do like a Smolov squat cycle, add 40 pounds of muscle, add 200 pounds to their back squat. And they're like, look at the data, look at the research, look how much muscle people are putting on. And I was like, well, you only see people who have survived. You don't see the trail of dead bodies that are on busted knees and low back injuries that happen from squatting 5 days a week. That's not sustainable unless you're a genetic freak and 24 and you have all day to train. Like, so
Yeah.
looking at the people who win, and then you have a 3 month program, like a 2 month program, you are going to feel pressure to get people results faster. So you are not going to do the foundational work, lay the groundwork, help them be successful. You're just like, all right, let's cut calories. What is the magic number for women's calories?
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, 1,200
That's
calories.
right,
Yeah.
1,200 calories.
The
Yeah, we
1,200
just drop
calorie
it to
target.
1,200.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like this. You were talking about like building crazy amount of muscle, and I had a funny story. Is like when I was working with the NFL Combine athletes. I think this is back in 2016, in a facility, and we did DEXA scans in all of them.
Mhm.
So we're able to see the data before and after. And this is a very regimented program. This is like for people that don't know, NFL Combine is sort of prospects that are coming off of college and they really have good opportunity to make it to the NFL. They're going to go to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, and they're going to be showcasing their skills. So they go through these training facilities, which is what I was working at, to really get prepped. These guys are putting on 12, 14 pounds of muscle, losing 10 pounds of fat. And I remember seeing those scans. And when people come to me and they tell me, like, I want to gain like 10 to 15 pounds of muscle in 2 months, it's like, okay, let me tell you exactly, totally possible. Let me walk you through what you need to do. And I walked them through their regimen. These guys were like, I had their breakfast control, their lunch control, their dinners control. I was literally almost like spoon feeding them their specific supplements. I had to like give them the shakes afterwards. They were doing like lifts, recovery, massages, yoga, like skill work. Like the entire day was spent working on their bodies. Do you have that kind of time, and are you going to be willing to do that? What the hell? No, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Got about
Okay.
45 minutes.
Yeah, so I got about 45 minutes, and sometimes I got to cut it short. It's like, okay, so this like actually brings up a good point, which is expectations versus commitment. And when those things are not matching, you're never going to get to your goal, because everybody could want to like I have this conversation all the time. Is everybody can desire a lot of things. I want to have a nicer car. Am I committed to do the things required for me to be able to purchase a nicer car? Maybe not today, maybe not now. So the same thing applies to health. I want to lose 30 pounds and I want to do that in 2 months. Okay. You want that. Are you committed to do the work required for that? And this is what this looks like. Well, that's a lot. Like, that's just too much stuff. I don't think I can do that kind of work. Okay. Then we got to lower the expectation that you have as far as what's realistic or not. And I think that those are realities sometimes really hits hard for people, because I feel like they're just fed so much information out there and what they think it's possible. So a lot of times I don't blame them. I think it's not fully their fault. It's just what they believe is what's meant to be true, and it's crazy, and it's just their reality, and it's unfortunate, but it's really what it is.
I have people all the time telling me they want to build muscle and burn fat at the same time. Or worse, they're like, I'm going to run a marathon. I also want to build muscle. I also want to increase my 5K time. You're like, well, hold up. So I read this meta-analysis. I have tried. I looked for it again. I couldn't find it, but basically the premise was looking at a bunch of different studies that people gained muscle and lost fat at the same time, and what
I
were the
remember it.
commonalities between them. And the thing that it said was that people were sleeping 8 to 9 hours per night, every night, and they were getting between 1.2 and 1.6 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And so, like, for most people that I work with, getting 8 hours of sleep per night is like a non-starter. I can count on one hand. I've got like 52 clients right now. I can count on one hand the amount of people who get 8 hours of sleep per night. It's
I
so,
agree.
you want to do these things, but can you even do the bare minimum of sleeping enough? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
we all have busy
And
lives and we
it's
all make sacrifices, but like, if you can't commit to that, we can't even start on like that kind of an intense path.
Yeah, it goes back to like the foundational things that are required. It's like the basic stuff. And like, again, going back to people want to run before they learn how to walk, and it's exactly what happens to them. And I did a recent YouTube video on that, and I think I remember what meta-analysis you're talking about. And there's only a few types of people that's possible. The newbies, right? Newbie
Mhm.
gains, right? That they don't have to. They just have to be consistent and lift some weights, and they're gonna be able to kind of build some muscle and lose some fat at the same time. The ones that are like freaks who are spending the amount of time in the gym, The ones that are putting on the right type of stimulus, because that's the other part of it too, which, I'm sure you've seen this before, is stimulus of training is it's a whole thing, and most people are not training as hard as they think they are, right?
That's a
So
fact.
that's another part of it, right? So you're not creating the right stimulus, you're not putting the right things as far as like food and nutrition. So you can't expect that. But then here's the problem. This is actually something that happens with both men and women. I work a lot with men, which is, well, I want to gain muscle, but I don't want to gain fat. So they're not willing to go through the process of what this looks like because they're afraid to do things. But I don't want to lose too much weight because this is for guys mostly, because I'm going to look too skinny. So I want to make sure that I retain muscle. It's like, okay, like, you want like a unicorn.
Hmm.
And that is, based on the way you live your life, like impossible. So you got to make a decision. Again, expectation versus commitment. Where do we need to kind of find a good rhythm in terms of that process? And I think when I coach clients, and that's the first that's the first conversation we have from the get-go, even before they become clients, because it's really difficult to change somebody's mindset if they already kind of are set in their own beliefs and what they feel like it's possible for them. So for me, it's like, hey, we're going to work together if we can really try to make sure that we can balance out like your expectations were your commitments. And if we're seeing eye to eye on that, then let's do it. Because if it's not, it's, we're just kind of spinning our wheels in here. And I think that happens a lot in my experience coaching clients that are not fully committed to the process.
I've lost a lot of clients, or at least like missed a lot of sales for this reason, because I tell people the truth. Like that, what you just described to me, that's not possible. You're sleeping 5 hours a night, you work 60 hours a week, and you haven't worked out in 25 years. You're not going to get those results.
And you're
They're
not
like,
willing to
well,
change any of those things.
yeah. I mean, you could go get on a load of steroids and maybe we would talk about it, but like that doesn't sound like a good option for your long-term health either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of, I think one of the things I tell my clients on the first conversation is, as your coach, I'm always going to tell you what you need to hear, and that's not always going to be what you want to hear. And I just want to make sure you're okay with that. And when the answer is yes, okay, then I think we have an understanding.
Mm-hmm. I like that a lot. Um, do you primarily have people track their calories as kind of like just to give a snapshot of where they're at? Like, are most of your clients doing some sort of calorie tracking? We talked about chronometer
Yeah.
earlier.
So I have found that I like to use it as a tool. I like for them to understand it as awareness, so calorie macronutrient awareness, and I like to kind of tier it up depending on their experience. So having somebody track their macros or like understand macronutrient balancing when they've never done it before is extremely difficult. So for me, I typically start with calorie awareness, but at the same time, I help them really try to understand what kind of path that they want to take. That's a tool, just like there's other tools for like, food journaling, like, the fact of just simply writing what you're eating. It's a helpful tool in itself without necessarily looking at the numbers. Picture logging, or again tracking. I use chronometer. I think it's like a great tool because I can see as a coach their stuff versus my fitness pal where they had to send me their stuff and I had to become friends with them. That's what I did for the longest time. So and the way I explain it to them, it's kind of a skill that you acquire to at some point not necessarily have to use it. I think you and I both know that, if you've done this long enough, you'll know that you don't need to be tracking your stuff every day to know that you're getting a ballpark of X amount of calories and X amount of protein, right? So I think what I teach my clients and what I really teach my audience in general is like, you can use this tool just like any tool that you learn how to use well, and then at some point it just becomes easier to be able to manage certain things. So the way I explain it, I use the analogy of a bank account and like budgeting and finance and financial management. If you're trying to kind of get a hold of your finances and trying to, let's say, stick to a budget or doing something along that, and you have no idea how to do that, what's the first thing you got to start to do? Well, first of all, you need to start to look at what is in your bank account, right? So the way I explain nutritional management is kind of like a calorie budget, is understanding what is it that you're consuming, what is like your bank look like right now, start to develop the skill to know how to properly budget, and then we can start to focus on how you really how you separate those things out in terms of carbs and protein and fats and different things like that, which can be now like the next step in the process. So I feel that that's been the most effective tool for some of our clients, but my goal is never to get them dependent on being calorie trackers or macronutrient trackers, but just developing the skill to do it with intention and to repeat it long enough so at some point they don't even have to do it, so they can understand exactly what adjustments they need to be making to their diet according to their goals.
And I think that there's a certain level of freedom once you start like getting to view the world through macro glasses, where you just look at a piece of bread and you're like 120 calories, 24 grams of carbs. You look at a chicken breast, you're like 36 grams of protein. Let's go. And you start
Exactly.
to see food as that's kind of constituent macro components. I think it just like that's a level of awareness, that like that can't be unseen once you start seeing it.
Exactly. And the more we repeat it, the easier. So imagine going to like a birthday party or a social setting or having a drink, and uh, how you need to be balanced. Like I want to have pizza tonight, but I'm within specific goals. Okay, I know that if I'm gonna do this, that's gonna be X. So I know maybe my breakfast needs to be adjusted, and people can like budget for this. So this is a way of living, right? Like you're increasing some things, you're lowering certain things, and it's more flexible. You can allow yourself to have the donut. You can allow yourself to have certain things. So it makes it easier, and then you have more freedom to make choices, and you don't necessarily feel restricted anywhere. And what I ask my clients is like, do you feel like you've been on a diet? And when the answer is no, I know I've succeeded, because then people do not necessarily feel restricted, but they're losing weight, they're accomplishing their goals, they're improving their fitness, and that's ultimately what it's all about, you know.
100%. If you could wave a magic wand and eliminate one piece of advice that other coaches or social media influencers or whatever give about health and fitness nutrition, what would that be? You just are
I
not allowed to
think
say
that
this anymore. You can't say this piece of advice anymore.
um, I think if I was just to pick something, it'll be uh, the promising a specific outcome in a specific time frame, because I feel like everybody's so different. So I think what I'm seeing a lot of coaches doing is, help you kind of get rid of like, 10 pounds and the unrealistic expectations too, which I feel like is sometimes like done with the purpose of like trying to kind of one up everybody else,
Mm-hmm.
which I get it.
Got to be a
I
special
think
snowflake these days.
yeah, exactly. So I think it's like promising, kind of like business coaches right now also, that they're promising a specific amount of like income, and like, if not, like, here's the guarantee type of thing. I feel like those things are not necessarily kind of working well with people. The second, I think if there's another thing that I would probably say that people need to stop doing, particularly in the wellness industry, is saying things that are hidden behind like some form of like supplement or product that they may be like trying to push, without necessarily focusing on the most important parts of it that they need to really change. So I'm okay with like, because I really support that. I think obviously there's like an important place when it comes down to supplementation and things like that, but I think a lot of times it's like, oh, like, but take this in order for you to be successful, otherwise without it you're not going to be okay. And I think that's another part of it too, that I feel like in the health and fitness, because the wellness, like, I mean, the wellness industry, it's like it's bigger. So you're hearing a lot about stuff about big pharma and stuff like that. It's like it's bigger than the pharmaceutical industry. So it's like there's a lot of money to be made within this, and I'm all for it. And I always like tell people like, yeah, I sell something, I sell coaching, I sell a service, like all these different things, and I sometimes like make money off of like affiliates and specific products that I'm supporting, but it's something I believe in, but not something that I'm pushing as in like you have to do this, otherwise like you're not going to be able to kind of get all the results that you're really looking to have.
I
So I
think
guess like that's the way that I kind of think about this.
I agree with you on that. And I think that like it goes both ways though, because like, everyone wants to stop the like drugs coming in from Mexico or whatever, the cartels. But everyone in the United States wants to buy drugs, like hard to stop the movement of supply when people are literally asking for the thing. And so like it's hard to blame some of these people who are like, just take this product, this oxy, fat burn product, whatever. It's like the number one thing you need when people are so desperately looking for a single silver bullet that is going to solve all their
That's
problems.
true.
So when you're like, yo, I have this program, it's a year long. We're going to walk you through stuff, mindset, like your individuality, your stress levels. We're going to talk about water. We're going to talk about nutrient intake. And they're like, what about a fat burn pill, And so people are just drawn to that thing, that silver bullet, that magic solution, the
You're
one
right.
thing that they've been missing this whole time, the secret that no one's telling them. That like until we start learning that there's never the shortcut, there's never one thing, it's a million little BBs and not one silver bullet. Like
Yeah.
we're going to continue to fall prey to some of these marketing scams.
Yeah, and I think, I guess, like, to your point, like, if that being the case, then I guess, like, we might as well just at least try to make sure that they're doing or taking the right thing, because
Yeah.
ultimately this is really what it really comes down to, and that really it's again back to the original conversation we had about selling what they want and kind of give them really what they need, and I think
Mm-hmm.
this really kind of falls down into that as well.
Do you think we've like kind of inadvertently created a culture of food, and like I'm talking like wellness industry, but also like pharmaceuticals and like the food, like food organizations?
100%.
Do you think we've created a culture where being confused about food is actually profitable for the industry?
I think so, and that's the thing about, like, me, because I think that we have, like, first off, we live in a heavily polarized climate around it, where food has meshed with politics and with pharmaceuticals. Like, it's all not this big giant ball. And I I'm one of those people that will tell you, like, I think there's a problem with big pharma. I think there's obviously a problem with big food. I think there's a problem with big wellness, and I think we're not doing a good job. I guess, like, also at the leadership level, in terms of obviously what needs to be done. I think there's certain things that are done well and certain things that are not. So if you ask me, like, what do you think the solution is? Well, we have to kind of look things uh, in a big picture, because I think right now we're looking at specific things as, like, the culprits of our problems, like the food dyes and stuff like that. Which, again, I can stand behind. I think we definitely need to be consuming less processed foods. We need to be eating more wholesome. We need to do all these different things like that. But I think, again, we're not necessarily focusing on the right things as a whole. So I do, to answer your question, think that yes, it's a multi uh it's there's so many different areas or packets by which, like, the food problem that we have today has been created from first of all, an industry, or like a country or a healthcare system that preys on people getting sick. That's 100% the case. So they can push pills, which is obviously another big issue that we have in our healthcare system, because you don't hear a doctor recommending a good diet. They're recommending is a cholesterol lowering medication or whatever is the case. And that's not a good way of living, right? It's like, it's not necessarily conducive to ultimate health. So I 100% think it's like a combination of problems. Then we have obviously big food and the food industry, which I know for a fact they're not doing a great job, because obviously they're focusing on profits. They're not necessarily focusing on what obviously the best interest of the consumer needs to be. Now, granted, there are, like, they're helping solve specific areas and problems around, like, feeding America, right? Because somebody said the other day, we got to eat like the 1900s, like, well, there was
Where
only two.
30% of people starved.
Yeah, and not only that, but 2 billion people lived in the planet. Now there's 8, right?
Yeah, true, true.
So it's such a big dichotomy, and, like, they're using so many, like, arguments around this, from the ancestral living, which is like an
Mm-hmm.
entire school of thought, then, like, the anti-science, then, I mean, it's so much stuff. So honestly, as a practitioner and somebody that knows and understands nutrition, I feel for the people that do not know about this stuff,
Yes,
because there's
it's
so much
terrifying.
stuff that it's terrifying. And it's not only terrifying, but at the same time, it's understandable why they're so sold. And again, it becomes their identity, talking about that common theme that we have, right? Because now you're just so sold on an idea, and it gets indoctrinated in you, that there's absolutely nothing that will change your mind. I mean, just go through a scroll on the comment section of a viral post on something controversial on any specific diet, and you'll find your answers, right? You'll never be able to win on an argument when somebody's just so sold on the idea. And I like to believe that I'm neutral, and in a way, I'm not gonna call myself unbiased, because I think there's everybody has a bias to a certain extent. But I like to, if you can prove me wrong, do so, and I'm gonna be happily open to changing my beliefs and changing my views on something if you have irrefutable evidence to show me that this is something that is known to be true that I thought it wasn't. If that makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I got two thoughts for you. Then I would love to do a hit it or quit it speed round if you're up for
Oh,
it.
I love it. Love those.
Yeah. So like going back to the ancestral thing, I always think about like people being like eat like our ancestors, but I guarantee you, you put a cheeseburger in front of a caveman, he's going to eat that shit up. Like guaranteed in and out, it's over, you know?
100%.
And then I heard something the other day and was talking about like how corporations, especially thinking about food corporations, have an obligation, a legal obligation to provide profits for shareholders. So they're legally obligated to reduce the quality of their food to provide higher profit margins. So like there's no wonder we're in a situation like we are right now where profits have been put over people because that's the law. Like, and people don't realize that like, oh, like big food, whatever, but like, regardless of how the upper echelon at Kellogg's really feels, they have to provide this financial incentive to
Yeah.
their shareholders. And so that's when like, so when they go back to the lab and they're now creating products that can bypass these GLP-1 inhibitors and create cravings, even if you're on Ozempic, like they have to do that. That's the law. You
So
know
it
what I
goes
mean?
up to the
Like,
top, right? Yeah.
yeah. And so we can't like, we like you said, it's a whole ball. It's all twisted
It's a
up. Like we
broken
can't.
system. Yeah, it is a broken system that it's just intermeshed. It goes all the way to the
Yeah.
top, and I don't necessarily think that the way that it's managed or it will be managed over the next few years, I don't know if it's going to really fully solve the problem.
I think
Like
you got to
I
opt
hope that
out.
it.
You got to pull yourself out of the system and take like you said, like a neutral viewpoint. Look at the data. Stop being a consumer. Start being someone who's a little bit more educated. So,
Yeah,
thank you to you for doing the work and providing that education and kind of speaking out
yeah,
about some of these topics.
absolutely, man, 100%.
All right, hit it or quit it. Speed round. Hit it is like this is good, or at least we'll say like this is fine. Okay.
Okay,
Quit it is like this is bad or below neutral. All right. I'm just gonna list out a bunch of stuff. You just give me your hot take.
okay,
You ready?
let's do it.
Hit it or quit it. Intermittent fasting.
Hit it. But like,
Keto
so
for
you
fat
said like
loss.
hit it, quit it, or there's a middle one.
No middle one. No middle ground.
Okay, let's just say hit it,
All right. Keto for fat loss.
quit it,
Seed oils.
hit it because I believe in the science, and we can
Ooh,
talk
if it
about
fits
that.
your macros.
Hit it.
Artificial sweeteners.
I think quit it.
Organic over conventional.
Quit it.
Fasted cardio.
Quit it.
Cold plunges.
I like him, so I'm gonna say hit it because I enjoy it.
That's good. Sauna for recovery.
Hit it 100%.
CrossFit.
I do CrossFit, so I'm gonna say hit it. But
All right. 75 hard.
quit it. I think it's just too strong.
10,000 steps a day.
I think hit it.
Blood flow restriction, BFR training.
Hit it.
Lifting heavy if you're over 40.
So I think hit it, but nuanced.
Sure. I love a no nuance answer though. It's just like, yes, go. Daily weigh-ins on the scale.
Hit it. I think there's a good relationship on that if it's done properly. Go ahead.
Sleep trackers like Aura Whoop.
I like him. Hit it.
Green powders.
Quit it.
Protein shakes.
Hit it.
Apple cider vinegar before meals.
Hit it.
Celery juice.
Quit it.
Liver King supplement stack.
Quit it.
Blood type nutrition.
Quit it.
Nice. Dude, that was good. That was really good. Thank you.
Yeah, there's some of them that are like nuanced. I'm like, man,
Oh, for
we gotta,
sure.
like, we gotta break this down a little bit better.
What is heavy? How old are you? What's your background? No, just lift heavy over 40.
I love
You
that.
heard it
I
here
love that
first.
section. Okay, I like it.
Andres, it was an absolute pleasure getting the chance to talk with you today. You have a metabolic assessment that you do for people. So if anyone is interested in that, I will throw the link to that into the show notes so you can check that out. Anything you want to leave us with before we jump?
No, man, I think I appreciate the time, honestly, to have and open up the space for conversation and for the content you're putting out there. And again, like, if you want to just check out some of our channels for, just more ongoing content, I think Nate's going to put some of those things in the show notes as well. So again, thank you so much for having me. And this was a blast, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I agreed. Oh, make sure you go check out his controversial YouTube videos on Optavia. That's where we're headed next.
Nice.